Welcome back to this latest episode, now fourth year of the Japan's Top Business Interviews podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, the president of Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Johan Gade, who is the CEO of Saxo Bank, Japan. Johan, thank you very much for today. Now, Saxo Bank may not be known to a lot of people. Tell us a little bit about Saxo Bank. What do you guys do here?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Greg, for having me on the show today. And I'm very happy to be here. And so Saxo originally started in Denmark 30 years ago. It was founded there in Copenhagen 30 years ago. And we are a securities broker where private individuals as well as corporate clients and institutional investors can open accounts with us to trade the global financial markets. So in Japan, we've now been here for almost 13 years.
Wow. Okay.
So we've had a long presence in Japan as well.
Yeah. And how about yourself? How is it that you're here in Japan running Saxo Bank? Give us a little bit of background on your career, what you've been doing. How did you get to Japan? How did all that work?
So that's actually a good question, Greg. So I originally started my career in Denmark, where I worked for another bank. And then I joined Saxo Bank, the headquarters in Denmark. I joined Saxo Bank around 14 years ago now.
Okay.
And so I've actually been with the company for almost half the lifetime of Saxo, given that Saxo is 30 years old now.
Yeah.
And then I came to Japan only 2 years ago, but I've been in Japan before as I'm married to a Japanese that I met more than 20 years ago now.
Right. So when you were here before, were you studying here or just living here or working here?
I was studying here. So this is my first time actually working here.
Oh, what were you studying? What were you studying here?
So I was studying mathematical informatics. So my background is actually in the rather quantitative field.
Quant field, yeah, absolutely.
Quant field, yeah. Yes. So that's what my background is. But of course, living here, I also picked up on the culture and being married and visiting Japan often. I also got more insight into the culture and what are the differences between the Danish culture and the Japanese culture.
So when you were studying here, where were you studying? Which university?
I was studying at the University of Tokyo.
Okay, Todai. Well, that's sort of the top of the tree. That's a good place to go, straight to the top of the tree. That's excellent. Yes. And how many years were you here studying?
I was only here for 1 year.
1 year, okay. So. Right. So I guess from the bank's point of view, they were very lucky to have an executive who has spent time in Japan, learnt the language, a lot of familiarity with the culture, etc. So did they send you here to establish the bank, or was it already up and running by the time you got here?
So it was already up and running by the time I got here. But certainly, yes, I think one of the things that I do bring to the table is a way to bridge the cultural differences between our headquarters in Denmark and our company here in Japan.
So I guess also this would have been your first occasion to be leading in Japan as well?
That is my first occasion leading in Japan, yes.
So you've been leading in Denmark, had a team in Denmark, and then you come here leading a Japanese team or an international team, or I'm not sure exactly which. But what was different about leading in Denmark, leading in Japan? You think about those cultural differences. What were some of the things you thought, this is not what I expected, or this is harder than I expected, or this is easier than I expected?
So that's a very good question, Greg. And I think one of the two things that I would like to highlight is one is the approach to sharing information in the team, where in Denmark we operate with a very flat organizational structure. So everybody can share information with everyone, basically, no matter where you are, whether you're a leader or you're just newly employed. If you have a good idea, you can raise your voice. And in Japan, more people seems to be accustomed to a way where you first share your ideas with your direct manager, and then the direct manager shares their ideas with their direct manager, and so on, instead of sharing it openly in a larger forum. So that's one of the key differences that I really found. And
does that mean that in larger meetings that not many ideas come up compared to, say, in Denmark, where in a larger forum there'd be lots of ideas popping like popcorn or something like that, but in Japan it tends to be a little bit different?
I think so. I think so very much. I think in larger meeting there will be more less discussions happening. People will be more listening rather than contributing directly.
In Japan, you mean?
In Japan, yes.
Right.
So what I've done since I started is having more of these discussions happening in smaller forums, and then having the ideas grown and cultivated that way, so that they can then be shared on a broader basis later on to adapt to that.
What were some other differences you found in leading?
So I think the key other difference I found was the actually how much also when we are a global company, it is important for us to highlight the differences to our headquarters so that they are more understanding of the cultural differences, because they may not be very, very much aware. So we need to actually make them aware, and also grow that awareness within the organization that there are these differences, so we don't misunderstand each other as much.
I guess you've got a bit of an interpreter role in terms of you're interpreting the headquarters' strategy, direction, ideas into the Japanese team, and you're interpreting the Japanese situation up to headquarters so they understand the context a bit better. So your role is sort of bridging those two worlds in many ways, isn't it?
I think that's very much the case, yes. I think bridging that role and that gap and making they understand the difference in culture is really where is one of my key strengths. So
what are the tricky ones to explain to headquarters? Like there's always bound to be some items which are a bit more difficult for them to put up with or accept or tolerate compared to others. What are some of the tricky ones?
Well, so one of them is, for instance, how do we approach our corporate branding and strategy?
Okay.
And I think the traditional Scandinavian look at this is that we have a very one way of approaching it, where we, for instance, we haven't used any characters or anything like that in our branding.
Okay.
We've just explained facts on our website. Whereas in Japan, characters is simply more of part of the culture. That you need a mascot or you need to have some sort of characters is quite a norm.
So from a Danish headquarters point of view, is that sort of thought to be a bit childish? Like what characters for kids? What are we talking? We're a serious bank here. Johan, what are you thinking? Is it that type of reaction?
It could be some sort of similar to that reaction, is whether that would instill some sort of exactly childiness, and or we are not being seen as a trustworthy partner or a immature partner. And so those are some of the concerns that might come up.
So did you actually did you create a character for the bank in Japan? Have you done that? Have you come up with a symbol?
Well, we haven't actually created a character yet, but we are going to. But what we have created is we have created a new campaign where we had a character. So if you go to our website right now, you will see a character, some sort of combined superhero cowboy character.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And I guess, in many ways, Japan leads the world in design and popular culture and anime and this type of stuff, manga. It's sort of amazing how many young people around the world are absorbing this stuff just growing up without having any particular contact with Japan. So I wonder if it might be a reverse takeover, that your Japan character might actually become something they take global.
Absolutely, I think there is this tendency now, also globally, that we will pick up having some sort of mascot or character to identify us with, and I think globally we will also be launching one very soon. So so there are definitely some sort of spillover effects happening.
Yeah. So why the cowboy character? Where's the connection here with?
Well, that was because our particular campaign was around also adding U.S. equity markets to your portfolio as part of having a diversified investment portfolio.
Sort of a Marlboro man for investing type of idea. Is that the idea?
Although we generally do not want to be associated with Marlboro,
with smoking, but the crusty cowboy, all-American image, I guess.
Some sort of stereotypical American image was the idea, yes.
Yeah, no. Good thinking. How do you engage this team? Because, you come from headquarters. They probably can understand you're going to be here for a number of years, not forever, probably, the way these work with, expats coming and going. And there's a certain direction that, you want to take the company in Japan. So what have you found has worked well engaging teams? And I'm sure when you were working in Europe, you found a way of engaging people that worked very effectively for you. You come to Japan, now I've got to engage a Japanese team. And being married to a Japanese is one thing. I'm married to a Japanese. We could never work together, I can assure you of that. Another thing is actually, you spent a year at university here. Okay, I was at Japanese university as well for 4 years. But that's different to leading a team. These are not the same thing. So the work experience for you is actually here in Japan as far as that leadership in Japan goes. So far, what have you found has worked well? What things you've been able to transfer out of your previous experience to work effectively with the team here, or what things you've had to create here to work effectively with the team here?
That's a really good question. So I think two of the things that I've done is we started having monthly sort of events for the team. Some sort of create a more team spirit or team building events.
A town hall or more than that?
It's more than a town hall. It might be some days we will have tea or afternoon snacks, or sometimes also with alcohol, sometimes without alcohol, to sort of team build and focus on something else than work.
Okay.
To just get some discussions going around more private nature to really strengthen the connectedness of the team.
Is that because everyone's in the office now? Everyone's come back into the office working here, or you've got a certain number of days a week people are working here and they're working remotely the other days, so you've got common days when you can have everyone in the office? Or are you calling them in for these events because they're mainly working from home? How does that function?
So we used to have mainly working from home when I started, but now we are mainly back to working in the office. So now still we have work from home, but maybe on a not on a daily basis anymore.
Right.
Maybe once a week people work from home.
More irregular. Right. So people are here. So if you're going to have, with booze, without booze, it doesn't matter. People are here. You can actually get them together and hold some function.
Exactly.
Right. And in terms of this, I guess, certainly we found it with COVID, working from home was good, but the bonds, the fabric of the teamwork start to fade, start to fall apart because you're just not seeing each other as much. And we had to try and create at least once a month we got together. And now from April we came back in the office to try and really get that teamwork going. So I can see why that's going to be important. In terms of other things you've found useful to engage the team, anything else that you've worked on that you've thought, that's doing well?
Yeah, so one of the other things that's been very important is understanding also by having some surveys of the employees from how do they feel both about how the company is, how about the team, how about the collaboration, is there any bullying or harassment or power power harassment or sexual harassment or any other type of activity going on, on an anonymous basis as well, conduct these type of surveys. And then we had focus groups for identifying what type of improvements could we make to these areas.
Now, are those surveys regular Saxo Global every 2-year type of surveys, or these are things you're doing specifically here?
So the survey is a regular annual survey that also done in the entire group.
Right.
But the initiatives we then created was specific to our office because the answers were specific.
Right. So you've got different issues, so you need different solutions.
Exactly.
I've worked in companies that had these surveys too, and you have to. Our headquarters for APAC was Hong Kong. You have to truck over to Hong Kong and sit in this room, and then they put up all the surveys, from all around the world, and invariably India, sort of Latin America, are off the charts in terms of everyone loves everybody, and high engagement, incredible. And then you have APAC as sort of like down the bottom as a region, and then you had Japan at the bottom of APAC, and you've got to, now, Greg, what are you doing in Japan? They're obviously not engaged, getting all this pressure from headquarters. So I don't know, have your surveys reflected that the way Japanese answer these surveys can be very conservative? Did you get the same issue here?
It's certainly not. Yes, we had some similar results on the surveys, and we do see a cultural tendency to not answer very extreme
that's right.
answers on the surveys.
Also, I wonder too, one of the things I found was when we sort of got these survey results, I went back and I looked at the translation of the survey from headquarters, And boy, that can make a big difference when you look at the translation into Japanese and you realize, oh, okay, we need to change, we need to improve that translation. Not we're trying to fix the numbers, but just the translation itself wasn't helping. And sometimes there are certain questions in the survey which are not culturally helpful in Japan. Like, classic one is, would you recommend working at Saxo Bank to your family and friends? If that was Australia or somewhere else like that, yeah, probably I would, yeah, no problem. Not too many Japanese want to take that responsibility because they're worried if they do recommend someone, the person hates the bank, they're going to blame them. Or if the bank hates the person, the bank's going to blame them. So that tends not to be a question that Japanese give a lot of positive encouragement to. So it's one of those sort of cultural twists on how we think about what would be an engagement indicator that often these surveys, I think, create a bit of a problem for the answers, Because if you ask people, on the other hand, do you think your Japanese team are loyal? Oh, yeah, they're really loyal. What about this survey result over here? And I say, Thomas, could be translation, could be the questioning. So I don't know if you've had a look at that, but have a look at that next time you get the survey back. Have a look at the translation and have a look at what are the prime so-called indicators of engagement from the survey point of view. It might be interesting. Anyway, I digress. But in terms of getting people to come up with ideas, you talked before about in big meetings in Denmark, people are putting ideas up and they're not scared to put their idea forward and share ideas. In Japan, it's more of a hierarchical approach. But if people are engaged, if people are committed, then they care. And if they care, they want things to be better. So what things you found in terms of idea generation that's not coming from you? Because often as a leader, we've got a vision for the direction of the company. We're driving the company forward. We're driving the agenda for headquarters. So we're coming up with ideas around that ourselves. But if we take you out of the equation for the moment and we looked at ideas coming from underneath, coming from the team, what things have you found worked well to get people to bubble up ideas about how to do things better?
It's a really good question, Greg. And I think one of the things is actually listening to their ideas. And so being engaged and being active and actually going around and listening to them. Because when you come and speak with them one-on-one, they will come up with the ideas. So that's one of the things that I find very important.
So are you doing that? How can I explain this? Are you doing this through your leadership team, or are you going around the leadership team directly to people to have these conversations?
So first of all, I'm doing it through my leadership team. I'm having regular one-on-ones with all my leaders and discussing what is what's happening in the business and what are the next steps and how is it going also with their teams. But I'm also regularly just walking around the office and seeing if anybody wants to discuss anything with me. And some people come up to me and say, "Hey, how about this, Johan? What do you think?" And then they come and present their ideas to me on a one-on-one basis. Something that they typically would not share in a bigger form.
Yeah, there's always the problem in Japan of ideas, isn't there? People are looking around the room, who's older than me, who joined the company before I did, who's a senior person, who's male, who's female. There's a lot of Japanese computations going on here that I know in Australia it wouldn't be happening. It'd be a bit more like Denmark. I think we'd be pumping ideas out and everyone would be putting their ideas in without hesitation. But in Japan, they're sort of calculating, well, actually, I shouldn't speak before he speaks because he joined the company before me, or he's older than me, or he's a he, and I'm a female, so I have to defer to him. And it's hard to break through that stuff. So the one-on-one is good, I guess. You can actually get around that problem. Yeah. And in terms of, do you have any formal idea generation, so-called ideation sessions? Do you have a methodology you've found for generating ideas, like, go to an offsite and you're doing idea generation, or a whole team doing idea generation? Do you have anything like that you do?
We don't have a whole team idea generation session, but we do have on a weekly basis. We have for different areas of the of the company sessions around what are the next steps and what sort of activities should we do in the next period.
And is that done team by team, or?
That's done functional area by functional area. For instance, the area of what can we do on awareness part. How do we spread awareness around the company? That's one area. Another area is what is the journey of becoming a client? Is that easy to understand for customers, or is it a hard thing? Or how do we help customers diversify their portfolio?
Yep.
That's another area. And so there are different areas, and it's done area by area. We have these meetings and sessions where we plan specific activities in order to improve our offering.
And one big thing in Japan, like everywhere else, is trust. And I think, though, in Japan, just the way human relations are so interlocked here, trust becomes a really big issue around everything we do. And so, you come in from Denmark, okay, your wife's Japanese, you've studied here at Tordai, all great stuff, but so what, You turn up, there was a leader before you, now you turn up, you have to get the trust of the team. So how did you go about approaching that? How did you go about creating that degree of trust in you from the team? What worked well in that regard?
So I think one of the things that I did was to share my own mistakes.
Oh, okay.
All the mistakes that I've gone through in my career. Some of them I've shared, and I've also reiterated a couple of times when I started, especially. That it's fine to make mistakes, as long as you learn from the mistakes, so you don't try to avoid them again. It's certainly fine to make mistakes.
Although in Japan, it's not fine to make mistakes, is it? It's a no defect, no error, no screw up culture here, isn't it? So that's sort of counterintuitive from a Japanese point of view, isn't it? So the boss comes in and says, "Look, here's some things I've learned through error." Mistakes, but I've learned, and we appreciate there are no mistakes. There's only success or education at the theoretical level. But everyone has grown up since early childhood having, don't make a mistake, don't make an error, bashed into their head right through their education system. So how do you actually translate that theoretical model in their mind into a practical model where they feel they are empowered, they can try things, they can do things, and they're not going to get fired if it doesn't go well? I mean, obviously everything should go well, but it's not the end of your career because you took a responsibility for a project or something. How do you get around that problem?
So I think it's very, very spot on. I think what I try to gain by sharing my own mistakes that I've done throughout my career is exactly to gain the trust that rather than trying to hide a mistake, if you make one, it's fine to share it so that we all can learn from it and become better.
And because also, I think in banking with compliance, that's the what will kill your career, isn't it? You try and hide the mistake, but you can't actually hide it. You're only temporarily hiding it, and it just sort of grows and grows and grows, and suddenly it blows up. So that, particularly in banking, I think that's got to be very important, isn't it? Fess up. I didn't follow this procedure as set down by the FSA or the bank's own rules, or I skipped this section, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. From a compliance point of view, that's pretty important, isn't it?
Or we should follow the rules, and we do believe we follow the rules. So I just want to say that. So So
the point
not
is,
mistakes in that way.
If they miss something, then they've got to have the feeling they can, sorry, I missed something here. Or
yes, because that's of course the step one is that we cannot have employees trying to sweep mistakes under the rug. They have to come up so that we can correct any mistakes that there should be, and also report it to the regulator in case it is
it's material or something.
A material mistake that impacts customers. I mean, fortunately, some mistakes are not mistakes that impact customers. It's other type of more simple mistakes.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. And in terms of, one of the funny things here is sometimes you'll have leaders say, oh yes, it's we're not going to, we're going to encourage people and try stuff and, go out there and go forth. And they do. And then some mistake happens. Next thing, whack in the side of the head, punished for making a mistake. So people look at that and go, well, that was obviously not a true statement about, we're free to make, some innovation here and accepting that sometimes with innovation there will be problems. In fact, that's not the case, so I'm not going to innovate anymore. So that messaging is very important. So how do you go about messaging when there are errors? I don't mean material errors, which that's a very serious nature of things, but I'm just talking about typical errors, things that are made, mistakes, or when projects don't go well, or things don't get done the way you hoped, or the campaign didn't work out the way you hoped, or wasn't as fast to the market as we needed, or whatever it might be. There's a host of things that could be. As a leader, how do you treat that? What's your public face on that? How do you treat that?
So again, that's where I think being Danish, having Danish background, I think it's perfectly allowed to make mistakes, and you will not get a slap on the face if it's the first time you make the mistake. If you repeat the same mistake,
that's a bit of a different story.
That's a different story, because that means you never learned anything from it.
Yeah.
But you will never ever get a slap for making a mistake the first time. Because exactly then I would not be following what I'm saying.
Exactly. So what do you say? Someone's been, I'll make it up. Someone's leading a project. Could be for a campaign or redesign or anything, right? And it doesn't go well, or it's not done on time, or something's happened, you know. How do you bridge that with that person? How do you engage them around this issue? What do you say to them?
So, of course, we should then understand the reasons why this happened, so that we can learn from it and reflect on it, so we can improve in the future going forward for the next project, because there will always be a next project. So, of course, we want to make sure we understand how we can improve, so we can use it from that. So that's the angle that we will approach it with, is the how to learn from it so that we can improve. Because that's really the core of what we do. We are constantly trying to innovate and improve everything we do, because there's always room for improvements everywhere.
Especially if you're a smaller player in a big market like Japan, you have to be nimble, you have to be innovative, you've got to be trying to get ahead of the big boys and girls, you know, because they're huge competitors here, right? So that innovation, that seed of difference is valuable, isn't it, for the company?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think when you came here, you saw that we have a dinosaur by our door.
Yeah, what's going on
reception. There? So that dinosaur is actually there to remind us never to become extinct.
All right.
That we always constantly have to innovate and renew ourselves. So we don't just get stuck in old thoughts and die out as a dinosaur.
That's interesting. Is that a common thing through Saxo, or is it a Saxo Japan thing?
That is a common thing through Saxo. So we actually also have we have dinosaurs in all our offices.
Do you? Okay.
Yes. So, but it is very relevant also here in Japan, where they are obviously much larger, more well known amongst the general public securities brokers.
And also, I guess with when you're thinking about building trust, it helps to have people take risks, celebrate failures too. I mean, do you celebrate failures? Do you take it that far? Like in some companies' cases, they celebrate the failures. You know, it's one of those things that I remember I read this story about Lee Iacocca when he was at Chrysler, and they launched a new car, completely failed. Just no one was buying it. And the head of the marketing was called up to the office, and the guy came in, he's expecting to be fired, you know, usual American approach, fired. And Iacocca said, fire you? We just spent $5 million educating you, you know? And I thought, wow, what an amazing statement. $5 million is pretty expensive education, you know, even for America. But that mentality of, you know, we are here to learn, and okay, we learned what didn't work. We've learned from this. We'll go forward. But you know, that's putting the money where the mouth is, isn't it? What about with your leadership here? How do you celebrate mistakes in the sense of, you know, we tried, it didn't work, but we tried, and we've learned from that, so people understand. They see that you're walking the talk. It's consistent, congruent.
I wouldn't go as far as celebrating mistakes. No, I don't think we've done that yet, but it's an interesting thought. So maybe we should. We are certainly celebrating successes. Also, if in general there is some other things that might overshadow the current success of a small project, we will still go ahead and celebrate that success, even though
a small component of the whole. Yeah?
Yes, a small component. So if, even though that we have maybe overall something that it doesn't work well, if some small components of that works well, we will go ahead and celebrate those components. So we won't say it's a
total write-off. Yeah.
total write-off, a total failure. No, we will celebrate what works well, even if the overall component doesn't work or the company situation is not good overall.
And what about culture? Because you started at the beginning talking about the cultural differences between Denmark and Japan, and your sort of role in managing that conversation across the headquarters in Japan. But what about, when you come here as a leader, you've got an idea what sort of bank you want to have in Japan, what sort of bank you want to create here in Japan as a leader, what sort of culture you want to have inside that bank, and you inherit existing cultures. And if people come from mid-career hires from other companies, they bring those cultures with them. So at some point, it's all got to be created into a Saxo culture, a Saxo Japan culture. And I'm guessing as a leader, you want to put your imprint on what that looks like. So what have you found works well to imprint what you want on the culture of the organization in Japan?
So you're absolutely right. I think it is a melting pot of different cultures meeting. And I think what I've done is we have regular town halls where all employees meet. And one of the things I always highlight is our strategy execution plan for the company. And actually the foundation of that plan is the people and culture. Because without that, we will not achieve our financial targets. We will not achieve any of our goals. It all starts with having the right team in place to create that. So for us, that's very important, and that's why I'll keep highlighting that. And then also in that town hall, we also have other speakers coming, internal speakers for mostly. But
internal means from Saxo from another country, or
from Saxo from another country, or from this the company,
the team here,
the team here, but not just me speaking.
I see. Okay, that's what you mean.
And touching different topics like diversity and inclusion, for instance. We had a session around that. What does it mean? What does inclusion mean? What does diversity mean? Why is it important? And how should we be aware of that in the company? So that's some of the things that we've tried to highlight these issues and make it more aware.
So what aspects of, say, Danish culture would you say you've implanted into the bank here to make it a more attractive workplace? Because, a lot of Japanese companies are incredibly hierarchical, rigid, inflexible, not friendly to diversity, equity and inclusion. And often people who want to work for Gaishke multinational companies have studied overseas, lived overseas. They like that freedom. They're trying to escape from that sort of box that, Japan society tends to put people in. So they're happy to come to, a foreign company because it gives them things they can't get maybe domestically in a typical Japanese company. So what things do you find that resonating with people here would be, you'd say, a typical Danish approach, but for Japan would not be so typical?
I think one of those things is exactly what we discussed earlier, which is around being allowed to make mistakes,
right?
And that the first order, if there is a mistake, is not to figure out who is responsible for the mistake,
so they can get punished,
but rather to figure out why was this mistake happening and what can we do to improve so it doesn't happen again. So it's taking the focus off the person, but rather addressing the problem.
What about speed? Because, one of the things that slows things down in Japan is there, again, so many layers and so much nemoashi going on, groundwork going on to get decisions taken and, bubbling away in the background, and finally it pops up and gets an approval. Whereas I'm sure, the Danish speed of decision making would be pretty much faster. It's like, okay, this is a good idea, boom, let's do it. Done. decisions taken. So I'm guessing if you're a Japanese person working in a foreign multinational company where there's that rapid speed of decision making, at first it must be like, wow, that never happened in my previous company. But in a way, it's very invigorating. It's very, enlivening. Like, oh, we can get stuff done here. And not a massive bureaucracy holding us down. So I'm guessing things like that too would be a typical product of maybe your very flat structure you've got in Danish business culture.
I think that's very much true too. Although I think making sure everybody is involved in the process is also important in Japan. That nobody feels left behind. So it is. I think there's a trade-off there. Because yes, in headquarters maybe decisions are made even more rapidly than we do in Japan. But here in Japan, we also still make sure everybody feels included.
So what does that mean? Does that mean more meetings? Does it mean more communication? What does that translate into in reality?
I think that in reality that translate into that we. Yes, we make sure everybody gets a chance to get heard. So we put these activities on the list of what we should do, and then we make sure we have the discussions, both informally but also formally at different meetings before we make the decisions. So I wouldn't say we're quite as rapid as we are in headquarters, but on the other hand, the pro of that is that we also make sure everybody feels included. So there is some trade-off, but it is certainly a different culture, and it is, I think, one of the things we do there. But I think other things that we are doing is also interesting, which is that we do actively promote people's careers in the company as well,
right?
Where they can get to start in one area of the bank, for instance, and then move on to something else if they find that they have the talent for it or they have the abilities to do so. So that's something we also actually try to promote, and we do have seen a lot of people within the team here in Japan changing roles from one area to a completely different area, but it's not based on some sort of rotational scheme. It's based on the fact that they have expressed a desire to try something new, as well as they have a talent for this new area.
Because as you say, that rotational thing in Japan is a very 3 years here, 3 years here, you just keep moving around the company, getting all this experience. But that's a little bit different what you're talking about.
That's completely different.
Right.
We're talking about actively promoting people's careers.
Right.
In areas where they have a talent. So we would not promote somebody to a different position if we believe the talent was missing for
which they do in the domestic companies from my observation. 1 year you're head of heavy machinery exports. Next year you're head of HR. It's like, how's that going to work? But they somehow make it work. Yes,
I've heard about that too. But which is why I wanted to clarify that it's not.
It's not like that.
It's not like that.
Yeah. Anything else you're doing that you sort of bringing something fresh to the Japanese, working environment here?
I think another part is the diversity. It's very important as well. I think the best type of ideas comes with this diversity, both gender diversity, but also diversity in terms of backgrounds. And so we're actually trying to promote that as well. And in fact, right now we have an equal number of male managers and female managers.
Okay. You're doing much better than the Japanese government, so well done.
So, but that's also important for us because, it's a big part of what we do, and then we also try to promote that also to our customers. Get more female customers interested in trading, in actually promoting what is the advantages of trading and investing for your own future, and leveraging the fact that we didn't have quite a number of female employees as well for that is important. But it's not just in terms of gender, it's also in terms of backgrounds. So
Yeah,
having
diversity
people.
in Japan basically means that, doesn't it? It doesn't mean ethnic, religious diversity like you may if you have in a melting pot like America or wherever. It's a little bit different to that system here. But also age too, I guess, because that natural tendency, I mean, it's an aging society anyway, and it's always been a seniority-based hierarchical society. So young people probably don't get much of a look in, in terms of anything. But that diversity is starting to include younger voices or younger viewpoints or younger insights as part of the diversity, I guess. Is that also something you do here?
Absolutely. And in fact, we have a daily morning meeting where the entire office participates or listens in, at least. Everybody is allowed to raise their voice at the meeting if they have something particular to share. There is no specific agenda for the morning meeting other than a few points that we go through every day. And generally the meeting maybe only lasts 5 minutes. Sometimes it lasts 10 minutes. But it's not supposed to be a very long meeting because everyone is participating. And in fact, the person that's been leading that meeting for the last couple of months is one of our younger employees.
Okay.
And it's not a manager.
Very good.
So again,
that's a distinct sign, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So showing that, trying to promote this, that we are a very flat structure. We are not that hierarchical in that sense.
Yeah, we have the same thing. We have a daily meeting. We go through the why, we go through vision, mission, values, all that sort of stuff. And we do it by rotation. It's on a spreadsheet. So it's sort of random in the sense of it cycles. And every day a person will take charge of that meeting and lead the flow. And then it'll go to someone the next day. So everyone gets a chance. I think it's a very good system. And we like it too because for us, our why part is a very strong driver. So we have to keep reminding ourselves about the why, and doing it every day is a good practice. If you're going to give some advice to someone, okay, hey, Johan, I'm being sent to Japan. They're going to get me to run the operation in Japan. I don't know anything about Japan. I don't speak Japanese. What would be some advice you'd give that person?
Be mindful of everyone and listen. Listen very carefully to what people are saying, what voices they're raising, and what concerns they're having, and be respectful of the culture that you meet. I think that's very, very important. So that's certainly where I keep my focus is on listening most of the time, speaking less. So
is that difficult?
It's being Danish. It is difficult. Yes, it's something you have to accomplish yourself too. But I think it's very, very important. So it's been a transition, but that's what I'm using.
Is that because I'm not that familiar with Danish culture, but I'm guessing is it a much more direct culture than say we have in Japan, and the boss would speak directly to people, probably back in Denmark. I'm sure that's probably the case, and so here. Everything becomes a bit more circular, a little bit softer, a little bit, a bit more oblique, not as direct, and so you've got to sort of change your style a bit to adjust to that demand here. And being really direct with people doesn't tend to work very well here. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's not about being direct. It's actually about listening to them, because the best ideas comes from listening and gaining the feedback from what they want to do. So it's not really about what I want to do. It's about what the team feels is best for the office, and that only comes by listening. And that's actually true in Denmark too, I think.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So, but I think that's very important. Being a good listener.
What else? What else would be good advice for someone being sent to Japan?
Being flexible. Being flexible to also look at the different viewpoints that the different people are having, and don't just make rash decisions based on only hearing part of the story. I think is also something where I spend time.
Mm.
Making sure you get the full picture before necessarily imprinting any of your own views on the situation.
And sometimes people are sent here with, marching orders. You got to go to Japan and fix that problem, right? So they get off the plane and they're like gung ho, like, right, I'll fix it. But there's a bit of a contradiction there, isn't there, of being so direct and not listening. So I guess what you're saying is slow down a bit on that and take your time a bit more, understand a bit better before you start taking any decisions. I think that's probably a good piece of advice in terms of, touching on what you're saying there about the listening and understanding part first.
Yes, absolutely. I think even if that's the mission, they come here to address a particular problem. Really, truly addressing it means you must understand the background for why it's not already been addressed. I mean, Japan is a very industrial society. There's a lot of smart people here, so there must be underlying reasons why it hasn't been addressed. So just if you come in with a mindset saying that's simple, I could just go and fix it here, then maybe you're the one that misunderstands what the fundamental reasons are. So that's why I think this listening part is really important.
Also, often the people coming in don't understand the customers. They don't know the customers. Maybe they know the customers from their own country. Doesn't help. Completely different set of customers, And trying to understand why things aren't the way they are back home is often based around the customer demand, or the customer requirements. And so, again, I guess not just listening to the staff, but probably listening to customers too would probably be a useful thing.
Absolutely. And that's actually also what we take very serious is we have surveys. In our platform, in our trading platform, we have multiple surveys for customers to answer when they use a particular functionality, when they do their first trade, when they do their first funding, how was that journey, was there anything to improve. We also just send monthly questions around the general satisfaction. Not to all customers, because we don't want to also, there's a balance between spamming customers and getting their feedback. So, but we generally tend to ask them to what are their general impression and also.
And yourself, when you got here, did you go and visit customers yourself to try and, get a grip on what's going on from that point of view, the market requirements, where you fit in with that, what the customer's thinking? Is that part of how you approached it?
Yes. So visit to customers, and also we try to have some when after Corona started to subside, we tried to have some physical events as well.
Oh, okay.
Where we could gather multiple customers.
All right.
So that the customers could also discuss with other customers.
Yep.
As well as discuss with us. And to those events I participated in to try to listen to their feedback. Because absolutely we are here for the customers. We are here to create a better system for our customers and a better experience for them.
What would be some other advice you'd give them? Should they learn Japanese?
I think knowing the language as well as the culture is very important, yes. I think that will go far, help a lot, for sure.
Yeah. And you found that yourself? I mean, I don't know how fluent you are in Japanese, but you've studied here before, you've been here before, your wife's Japanese, so presumably you're able to deal with the customers directly in Japanese, which I'm sure from the customer point of view makes a huge difference.
Yes, so most of the conversations I've had with customers was in Japanese, yes. So I think that makes a big difference.
And there's also a big element of trust too, isn't there? When you have to talk through an interpreter to the client and you go directly, you can connect so much better. It's so much more powerful, isn't it? Even if your Japanese is not perfect, just the fact that they feel they can talk directly to you without going through someone. I think that makes everyone feels a bit more comfortable.
I would agree to that, yes. I think.
Anything else you'd recommend someone who's being sent here to run the operation in Japan? Anything else they should think about?
Well, other than listening to the customers and listening to the employees, I think those are probably the
Probably got to cover it off.
Key parts. And then again, being open-minded. We also very open-minded. We also look at what's happening in the market in order to understand better what are the new customer demands coming up.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe it's not something you hear from the customer right now, but it's something that will come up, and so that we can be on the forefront of providing the best customer experience.
And if you're going to give a definition of leadership, what would that be?
So that's a very, very good question you have there, and to me, I think it's having all the employees come together and both work towards the same shared common goal of creating not just a better customer experience, but also a better work environment for the employees themselves.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like the place to work. Well, thank you very much, Johan. Appreciated your time today. It's been great. So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.